Hi everyone, Leah here from EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another helpful beading video for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to go check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and you'll always know when we're posting new content. So today's video is going to be a stitch tutorial video. We have many of these on our channel, and the final product for this video is not going to be a finished piece of jewelry. What you're going to take away from this is how to do a certain stitch. And today that stitch is going to be Odd Count Flat Peyote. Now, if you have no experience with peyote, I wouldn't recommend starting with odd count. It's a little trickier than even count flat peyote. You're going to want to go to our channel and check out the video that we have on even count flat peyote first if you've never done this before. That's going to make odd count just a little bit easier. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, if odd count flat peyote is trickier, why don't I just always use even count flat peyote? Well, the difference here is that the number of beads going across is odd versus even, which allows us to have a very center beaded row. Now in this case, I've demonstrated that with a second color and a straight line going up that middle row. But that line, or the fact that we can have beadwork right in the center, can also be the basis of many other patterns that you want to work into your flat peyote. So I demonstrated it very simply here, but again, that can translate to any kind of centered pattern that you'd like. Now, I've also used size 11 delicas to do this here. Delicas are so wonderful for doing peyote because their profile is that of a square, so they interlock beautifully. But for demonstration purposes, and so you can see it a little easier on the video, I'm going to be using some size 8 seed beads. This is also another good way to practice too. So I'm going to dump out a little bit of my beads, and let's get started. Okay, so I have my two different colors here. This is going to be my main color, and this is going to be my little stripe in the middle. And I also have a third color, but I only need a single bead of that, and that's just going to be a stop bead. And you can see that I used one right here, that little gray bead. And what's nice is that this will help you start your peyote, but it's not part of your project, and you will eventually be able to pull it right off and weave that tail in as normal. So it's important that your stop bead is a different color than the rest of your beads, because otherwise it can be very easy to accidentally weave it into your project, and you don't want that to happen. So I'm going to start by loading on an odd number of my beads, just like this. Now at the very end of my tail, I'm going to get my stop bead on there. And all I'm going to do is stick it onto the thread and then thread that little tail back through it. Now, because this is a size 8 stop bead, I am going to go through it again. The larger your bead is, or the larger your stop bead is, the looser it's going to sit. This was just a delica, just going back through it once would be fine. Now, I'm just doing a little sample here, so I'm not really worried about the length of the tail that I have left. If this was a project, you're going to want to make sure that you leave a tail here that's long enough that you could put a needle on it later and weave it in. So our peyote is going to start off just like normal. So again, if you're not familiar with even count flat peyote, you're going to want to research that a little bit. Go take a look at our channel, watch our video on it, and that's going to prepare you to be a little bit more ready to do odd count flat peyote. I'm going to pick up my new bead because I'm going to assume that at this point, watching this video, you understand the basics of how peyote works. And I'm going to start to peyote my beads into place. Might have to pop them into place just a little bit with your finger. If your tension bead loosens up, you can push it a little bit closer to your beadwork. There we go. You want them to sit one on top of the other, just like that. Pick up a new bead. Go through the next one. Pick up your next bead, peyote that into place. And when we get to the end, you're going to see what that difference is with that odd count peyote. So now normally at the end, you would be picking up your last bead and you'd have a bead at the end of your row to go into. Now, it kind of looks like that should be this one, but remember, we're pretending this isn't there. It's serving a function and that's it, and it's going to be removed. So if you pretend like it's not there, and you look where your thread is coming out, we don't really have a bead to go into because this is the bead that our new bead would sit on top of, but there's no bead after that to lock it into place with. And again, no, we're not using our stop bead. That will be taken off of our project. Again, this is why it's also important to have it as a different color so you don't accidentally utilize it and weave it in. So there's a funky turnaround that you have to do with Odd Count Flat Peyote. Now, is it a little tricky to learn at first? Yes, but once you know it, you got it. But the plus side is that you'll only have to do it when you're on the side of your little peyote strip that has your stop bead. Whenever you get back to this side, you won't have to do the funky turnaround. I'm also going to show you later a little cheat method, but I will explain to you the pro and the con of the cheat method. Now, to do our little turnaround, I like to turn my beadwork around, just like I do anytime I'm going to be starting another row of peyote. Now, to lock that new bead into place, you're going to head right back into the bead that it's going to sit on top of. So you can see where my thread's coming out. I'm going to go into the bead that's right after it, heading in the direction towards the rest of the beadwork. You're going to want to hold it nice and tight in your fingertips. And you're going to want to encourage your new bead right here to sit up on top of it. Okay. So now what we've done is we've created a little space here for the next row, but we're not in the right place to be adding another bead because eventually what we want to be doing is coming out of this bead, but heading in the direction going this way. So where do you go from here? You're going to head in one more additional bead. And once you get your needle pulled through that bead, you're going to want to have it nicely pinched between your fingertips so nothing can loosen up on you. And here's where it's a good place to give it a nice good tug if things felt like they were starting to loosen up. Now you're going to want to go through another bead. This is the second to the last bead that you added, or the third new one that you added when you were coming from this side. You're going to go through that bead. And we're going to go into the bead next to it, or if you're holding it this way, the one below it, depending on how you're holding your beadwork. And this will reverse your direction of your thread. Again, once you have it through, pinch it between your fingertips, give it a nice tug. Then we want to go through the next two beads. Just like that. Give it a pinch. So now if you look at where we're coming out, when we first locked this bead into place, we did so by turning and going into the one below it, but heading in this direction. Now we went up here, down here, and out here. So we're exiting that same bead, but now on the outside of the bracelet. So again, we added this bead, we went into this bead, up this bead, down this bead, and then through those beads. So again, just look at that pattern there. That's what you're going to want to memorize. New bead, into here, up here, down here, out here. Now you're set up to go into that most recently added new bead, but heading in the direction towards the inside of the bracelet. And we can now, you can see this little empty space there, we can now add the next row of beads. So we'll pick up our new bead here. We can peyote into place. And now the next little space is ready for our center color. And again, you don't have to utilize odd count flat peyote just to have some center line, except when you have to pick up very certain colors in certain places. So now I popped out of the end just like normal. So remember what I said, whenever you get to this side, the side that's opposite the stop bead side, things will be normal. You'll have a bead to go into to lock that one into place. You can turn your beadwork around as normal, and you're ready to keep going. So I'm going to show you that turnaround one more time. So let me just make it back to the other side here, and I'm going to show you when that turnaround one more time for you. Okay, so we are now in that magical spot where we're on the side of our stop bead, and we have no bead to go through to lock our newest bead into place. So again, I find it easiest to now turn my beadwork as usual. And the bead that's right below the one we're coming out of, so we're coming out right here. This one right here, we're going to head into it like this in the direction towards the rest of our beadwork. And you might have to use your finger, as you can see, to pop that up into place. And then just try to remember that same thread path, which is going to be going up the next 2 beads after it. There you go, right there. Going down 1 bead and then out those 2 again. So if you can go through both at once, that's even more helpful. Just like this. And you go to the bead underneath it or next to it, depending on how you're holding it. And then you're going to go through these 2 beads here, heading diagonally down like that. And then we are set up to go right up into that bead right here to do our next row. All right, but I'm going to come back in just a minute and show you a great little tip. All right, so now for that fun little cheat method. So what I did was I peyoteed back to this side and then back over to the side that would need a turnaround. Now, something to keep in mind is that while you can use the stopper bead as your cue to know when to do a funky turnaround, you can also take it off. So all I did was I just grabbed that and I pulled it off. It should be pretty obvious when you're on your side that needs a funky turnaround because you can see there's no bead to go into. So that's really your visual cue there. Now, here again is where we would normally do a funky turnaround, which would mean picking up our new bead, heading back into this bead, heading up those 2 beads, down 1 bead, and then out those 2 beads again. And then up into the new bead, which would then set us up to go to the other side. But I'm going to show you a little cheat method, and I think it does have one con to it, but I'll let you be the decider of that. So all you're going to do is pick up your new bead, and instead of going into this bead, you're actually going to go underneath the stitch of thread that's connecting that bead and the one below it. And just like before, or just like normal, you might have to pop that up into place and give it a tug to tighten it. And then now you can head right into this bead to continue your beadwork. But something I want you to take notice of is you're gonna create more threads on the outside. And this is, I think, what the con is of this method. The pro, obviously, of course, is that it becomes faster than doing that more complex turnaround. But you're going to have, so you have little nice single stitches, you're going to have a bit more thread showing because you're going underneath that thread right there, that stitch of thread right there. So it's just something to keep in mind. But now you're set up to go and do your next row. But once you understand that thread path of where you have to go, it really will become second nature, and it doesn't slow you down too much when you're doing your beadwork. So let me just show you that one more time. Let me quickly peyote over to the other side. And again, practicing this on 8s is great for your eyes. However, the only tricky thing is that the 8s won't want to easily sit as tight as, say, working with delicas. So there's a pro and a con there too of practicing this with size 8s. So again, we're back where we need to do a funky turnaround, which would normally be in this bead, up 2, down 1, out 2. But we're going to do that funky cheat method again, which means we're just going to go underneath the stitch of thread that's there. Again, you'll have to usually pop that up with your finger, hold it in place nice and tightly, and then go right through it. But again, I feel like you do end up seeing a bit more thread here. Now that may not be a big deal. Perhaps you're planning on adding some edging, some beaded edging to this. Well, then that's not a big deal at all, in which case absolutely use the cheat method. But that's up to you. So pros and cons for pretty much everything. But again, that nice center row is going to allow you to create patterns that have a very centered row. Otherwise, if you were doing even count flat peyote and you wanted a pattern that was centered, while you can do that, this very center part needs to be 2 rows side by side. So if you imagine that this row's gone and you have 2 centered rows, so the dark row and then the lighter row next to it. So your pattern would have to be centered with 2 rows being the center. And while that might work for some patterns, it may not work for others, especially when you want to have, say, a nice fine point worked into your design. So if I wanted to have a diamond pattern in here, the centered line works out great because there's the bottom point of my diamond, there's the very top point of my diamond. With even count flat peyote, my diamond wouldn't get to be as pointy because it would have to have 2 beads at the points on the top and the bottom. So that is the plus of doing odd count flat peyote. All right, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. Make sure to visit us on over at EurekaCrystalBeads.com for a wide variety of all different seed beads for you to practice with and have fun with any sort of peyote that you'd like. But specifically, so you can practice your odd count flat peyote, we have a large number of delicas, and of course, we have a beautiful selection of size 8s as well as many, many others. So go have fun picking out some beads so you can practice this really, really great stitch. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.